Today class is on salivary gland disorders. We'll start the class with a William Shakespeare quote. Saliva is not one of the popular body fluids. It lacks the drama of the blood, sincerity of the sweat, and the emotional appeals of the tears. Salivary gland disorders and abnormalities are important orofacial disorders because of their anatomical locations and subject to oral complaints. Patients with such problems usually reported in dental clinics for evaluations and its therapy. Therefore, it is necessary for dentists to be knowledgeable in regarding common salivary gland disorders and its diagnosis and therapeutic tools that are available. There are three pairs of major salivary glands and 300 to 700 minor salivary glands present in the oral cavity. An average of 0.5 liters of saliva is produced on each day. At rest, about 0.3 ml of saliva will be produced, but it rises to 2 ml on stimulations. At rest, parotid produces 20% of the salivary secretions, and submandibular gland produces 65% of the salivary secretion, and sublingual and mandibular salivary gland contributes 50% of the salivary secretions. The nature of the secretion also varies from gland to gland. Parotid mostly serous in type, and submandibular is mixed secretions, and minor salivary gland and sublingual gland are mucinous in secretions. Anatomy of the parotid gland. Parotid is the largest of the salivary gland. It is a compound, tubular acinar and exocrine gland. The gland is situated in the space between the posterior border of the mandibular ramus and the mastoid process of the temporal bone. The external acoustic meatus and the glenoid fossa lie above together with the zygomatic process of the temporal bone. And its deep aspects, the medial lies the stylar process of the temporal bone. Inferiorly, the parotid frequently overlaps the angle of mandible, and the deep surface overlies the transverse process of the atlas of the vertebra. The shape of the gland varies from often triangular with apex directed inferiorly. On average, the gland size is 6 cm in length and maximum 3.3 cm in width. The superficial to the surface of the gland covered by the skin, platysma, greater auricular nerve, superficial temporal artery, auricular temporal nerve, and deep to the medial surface of the parotid gland lies in the structures forming the parotid bed. The digastric and silent muscles separate the gland from the underlying the interjugular vein, external and internal carotid arteries, glossopharyngeal, vagus, accessory and hypoglossal nerves, and sympathetic trunk. Styloid ligament separates the parotid and submandibular gland. Submandibular gland consists of the larger superficial lobe lying within the digastric triangle in the neck and the smaller deep lobe lying within the floor of the mouth. The deep lobe arises from the superficial lobe at the posterior free edge of the mylohyoid muscle. The sublingual gland is the smallest of the major salivary gland. It is almond shaped and weighed approximately 4 grams. The gland lies on the mylohyoid and is covered by mucosa of the floor of mouth, which is raised as it overlies the gland to form the sublingual fold. The parotid gland has an accessory parotid gland will be present on the duct. The parotid duct is open anteriorly to the parotid gland and passes through the masseteric muscle and pierces in the buccal muscle and opens into the oral cavity opposite to the second molar through the parotid papilla. The submandibular gland's duct is called as a Watson duct, which is opened into the oral cavity below the tongue through the lingual frenum bilaterally. Sublingual gland has the Bartholin's ducts, which opens in the floor of mouth through the submandibular gland ducts. Content of the parotid gland. The structures passes the parotid gland from superficial to the deep are facial nerve, auricular temporal nerve, retromandibular vein, external carotid artery, passes through the substance of the parotid gland, and the parotid lymph node and parotid ducts. On entering the parotid gland, the facial nerve separates into two divisions, the temporofacial and cervicofacial, the former being the larger. The division of the facial nerve is the same, sometimes called as a pes anseris, due to its resemblance to the foot of goose. From the temporofacial and cervicofacial, division of the facial nerve gives rise to the 5 branches, namely temporal, zygomatic, buccal, mandibular, and cervical. The submandibular glands lies between the myloid muscles infralaterally, hypoglossal and styloglossal muscles more medially, the lingual nerve superiorly, and the hypoglossal and deep lingual vein inferiorly. The sublingual gland has a variable number of excretory ducts and ranging from 8 to 20 numbers. Majority is drained into the floor of the mouth at the crest of the sublingual fold. Few forms as a Bartholin duct, which opens with the orifice of the submandibular duct. The three basic subunits of the salivary gland tissue includes acinus, the secretory duct, which composed of intercalated and striated ducts, and collecting ducts, with the acinus and proximal secretory ducts comprising the secretory end piece. The salivary glands are composed of large number of secretory acini, which may be tubular or globular in shape. Each acini drain into the duct. These microscopic ducts coalesce to form as a lobular ducts. Each lobule has its own duct and then merge to form a main ducts. The acini are the primary secretory organ, but the saliva is modified as it passes through the intercalated, striated or excretory duct before it being discharged into the mouth and oropharynx. Myoepithelial cells are the contractile cells closely related to the secretory acini and also much of the duct systems. Thus, myoepithelial cells squeeze the saliva out of the secretory acini and the ducts add to the salivary secretory pressure. Function of the saliva: keeps the mouth moist, lubricants food and mouth during the chewing, swallowing and phonations. Render the food substance soluble, thus aiding in taste sensations. Digestion of starch in the diet is first by alpha amylase ptyalin in the saliva. Noxious substance increase the salivary secretion, thereby help in diluting the noxious stimuli. Bicarbonates and protein contributes to the buffering power of the saliva, restore the physiological pH of the oral cavity. Recent studies have shown that saliva to have antiviral properties helps in maintaining tooth integrity. May be used as a diagnostic tool in monitoring physiological disorders and systemic hormone and drugs levels. Protective and antibacterial functions of saliva are salivary mucins, glycosaminoglycan, coating the oral mucosa, protect against the harmful effect of noxious stimuli, microbial toxins, and minor trauma. This coat traps the microbes and transfers them into the stomach, where the acidic pH of the gastric juice degrades them. Lysozyme, an enzyme that has a little effect on the normal flora, inhibits the non-commensals by combining with immunoglobulin IgA antibody, lyses the bacteria. Thiocyanates dependent factors, the presence of which increase the chance of oral malignancy, is increased with the decrease in saliva, as seen in the smokers and tobacco chewers. Lactoferrin binds with the available iron and does not allow it to enter to the bacterial metabolisms. Antifungal property by histidine-rich peptide inhibits candle growth. Mucosal antibodies and salivary mucin secreted by the submandibular gland has demonstrated antiviral property, anti-HIV, anti-hepatitis antigens. Nerve supplies by parasympathetic and sympathetic nerve supply. The parasympathetic arise from the inferior salivary nucleus from the brainstem. The tympanic branch of the glossopharyngeal nerve passes through the foramen novella to otic ganglion, the chordae tympani of the branch of the facial nerve. The sympathetic nerve through the superior cervical sympathetic ganglion reaches the gland via the plexus around the middle meningeal artery. Innervate the auriculotemporal nerve. The postganglion through the auriculotemporal nerve, which distributes the parasympathetic secremotor fibers throughout the parotid gland. The sensory innervation of the parotid gland capsule is through the greater auricular nerve. Submandibular gland and sublingual gland supplied through the chordae tympani, submandibular ganglion with lingual nerve to the sublingual gland. Salivary gland diseases. It is classified into 4 types. One is inflammatory, obstructive salivary gland disease, autoimmune, asymptomatic parotid hypertrophy. Terminologies used in salivary gland disorders are silosis, non-neoplastic and non-inflammatory enlargement of salivary glands, and sialadenitis is inflammation of the salivary glands. Sialoductitis, it's inflammation of the salivary duct. Xerostomia, salivary productions when there is lesser than 0.2 ml per minute, and hypersalivaria, diminished salivary protections greater than normal but more than 0.2 ml per minute. Silolithosis is a calculi or stone in the duct or gland. Silactasis is atrophy of the total or part of the salivary gland. Tylism is excessive secretion of the saliva greater than 4 ml per minute. Xerostomia. Xerostomia is otherwise called as a dry mouth syndrome. Usually cause for the xerostomia is radiations, age, major surgery of the salivary gland, hyperproteinemia or hypervitaminous, and drugs, diuretics, anticholinergics, and antihistamines like atropine drugs. Complication following the xerostomia is dental caries, periodontitis, mucositis, oral candidiasis, dysphagia, speech problems, halitosis, poor denture retentions. Management is by use of the water or gels, lozenges and sour candies, non-fermentable carbohydrates, salivary stimulating agents, glycerol or lemon juices, and oral hygiene by chewing gums, fluorides containing chewing gums can be used, hexine mouthwash, and artificial saliva can be substituted. Silox can be given. Silolithosis, formation of the calcific concentration within the ductal system of the major or minor salivary glands. The factors involving formation of the calcific concentration is salivary stagnation, nidus or matrix formation for stone formation, aggregates of the battery, clumps of epithelial cells, blebs or mucosa, blood clots following trauma, small foreign bodies are important in the nidus or matrix formations. The metabolic mechanism favoring the precipitation of the salivary salts into the matrix. More common in the submandibular glands due to saliva is more alkaline nature, contains greater concentration of calcium and phosphate salts in the form of appetites. Longer ducts located at the lower level than its orifice, it has an apical course. The composition of the silolith is calcium phosphonate, calcium carbonate, soluble salts, organic matrix, waters. The clinical features, the total absence of symptom will be present. It will be found on routine radiographic examination like OPG or a mandibular occlusal view. Eating initiates the intermittent transmitted swelling of the involved glands accompanied by the moderate discomfort. Patient is comfortable, concerned about the recurring swelling. Gelatinous cloudy mucus or basically clear or adequate saliva will be present, derived from the inflammatory ductal changes caused by the blockage and salivary stagnation. The pronounced exacerbations characterized by the acute suppurative process with systemic manifestation like fever and malaise. Pus exudes from the ductal orifice, soft tissue around the duct is inflamed, gland is enlarged, tender and tense on palpations. Pain will be increased on salivation and mastication. The diagnosis is by digital manipulation. The gland is firm and larger, produces flow of saliva. Visual inspection of the fluids, location of the hard calcific stone along the ductal course, yellowish color of the calcific deposit seen through the distended and thin mucous membrane, metallic probing, the grating sensation and probing will be felt. The investigations are routine radiograph like OPG and silography. The management is by surgical removal of the salivary calculi. First, the calculi should be localized, whether it is intraglandular or in the duct. Incision in the floor of the mouth is directly over the swelling. The longitudinal incision is placed along the parallel to the mucosa. Exposure of the duct should be done. Temporary ligature is passed proximal distal of the duct, opened by the duct to prevent the calculi or stone should be passed through the posterior aspect of the duct. Duct opened by the longitudinal incision and calculus is removed. The mucosal incision is sutured. Some of the duct should be sutured in the mucosa to prevent the stitches. The calculi is located due to the yellowish color by the presence of yellowish color. The calculi can be small in size, can be holded with the mosquito or tissue holding forceps by placing small incision or squeezing the duct can remove the calculi. Silography. Xylography is a specialized radiographic procedure performed for detection of the disorders of the major salivary gland, usually parotid and submandibular glands. The technique is employed for examination of both parenchymal and ductal abnormalities. It involves the cannulation and filling with radiopaque or contrast agent to make them visible on the radiograph. Indication for xylography is detection of the calculi or foreign body in the duct or gland, determination of the extent of destruction of the gland secondary to the obstructing calculi or foreign body, detection of fistula, diverticula or strictures, detection and diagnosis of the recurrent swelling and inflammatory process, to find out the tumor location and size of the tumor, selection of the site for biopsy, outline the plane of the facial nerve, residual stone or tumor or fistula or stenosis. It's a picture showing the strictures and the stone, the narrowing of duct due to the obstruction of the stones, and after the removal of the stone and dilatation of the duct can be seen clearly in this xylography. Contraindication: known sensitivity to the iodine compounds. Patient with a known allergy or hypersensitive to iodine compounds and other radiographic contrast media. This includes marked urticaria, dyspnea, asthmatic attack and anaphylaxis. Acute inflammation of the salivary systems leads to the contrast media cause the irritations. There is increased chance of rupture of the duct and excavation of the contrast media into the already inflamed gland. There is a potential for retrograde dissemination of pyogenic organisms throughout the gland and interfere with the thyroid function test. Xylography should be referred in the patient scheduled for a thyroid function test, or such tests should be performed prior to the xylography procedures. Contrast media. The ideal requisites are physiological properties similar to the saliva, miscibility with saliva, absence of systemic or local toxicity, lower surface tension and lower viscosity, easy elimination, absorption and detoxifications. Types of contrast media: water soluble, it has lower viscosity, lower surface tension, more visible with saliva. Filling finer ductal system under low pressure, facilitate prompt drainage, less pain and discomfort will be present, no significant granulomatous lesion will be present. Residual contrast media absorbed and excreted through the kidney. Opacity is not good in reduced contrast. Water soluble media are Hypaque 50%, Hypaque M75%, Renofgraphine, Isopaque or Triocel are the available in the market. The composition of generic composition will be ditrioside sodium 50%, ditrioside meglumine, ditrioside sodium 25%, and metrosiate sodium. The fat soluble xylographic contrast media are satisfactory degree of radiopaque opacification will be present, extravasation will be present with severe body reaction will be present, more viscous, higher injection pressures needed for injecting contrast media, greater discomfort and poorly eliminated from the duct. Iodized oil, ethidiol, lipid oil, water insoluble organic iodine compounds, pentopaque. Normal xylographic appearance: the parotid glands, the tension duct is 1 to 3 cm in width and 6 cm in length, branches gradually and smoothly into the second and third order ductiles. In the anterior posterior, it is a 2 cm lateral to the mandible. The normal xylographic appearance of the submandibular gland: the Watson duct is 5 cm length, lumen is 2 to 4 mm wider than the parotid, external orifice is smaller, submandibular acini are more rapidly filled, acini are larger, wall of the duct is thinner and offers less resistance. Second and third order ductiles are short and more accessible to the media. The pathological changes, the ductal changes are calculus. Will be seen in the plain film, occlusal view, cheek blow out, AP view or open mouth lateral view. The filling defect is in the main duct distal to the calculus. Lobules are overfilled. Ductal dilatation caused by associated siloductitis. Emptying film shows retained contrast media. You can see the strictures in the duct with contrast. Silid ductitis. It's inflammation of the ductal systems. Segmental strictures and dilatation of the larger ducts. Sausage string appearance will be present. Ascenian ductiles are not dilated. Glandular changes, adenitis, sacral dilatation of the ascenia terminal ducts, main and duct and interlobular ducts appears normal in the caliber. Sjogren syndromes, the widespread dots, blebs within the gland will be seen. The snowstorm appearance will be present. Due to the wearing of the epithelial lining, the intercalated ducts allows escape of the contrast media. The tumors, we have the eccentric tumors, the tumor present outside the gland. The glandular architecture preserved but displaced, ascenia are compressed and ducts are intact. The emptying phase, the ductal system empties normally because the glandular parenchyma is normal. Intrinsic tumors, the normal ductal ascenic architecture is completely replaced by pouring of the contrast media. Emptying phase, the pattern is unchanged. The inflammatory disorders is adenitis. The silenitis defined as the inflammatory condition of the salivary glands. Etiology and types. We have three types of adenitis. It's a viral, bacterial, granulomatous, and post-radiation and allergic. The silenitis can be classified as acute and chronic and recurrent. Approach in the management. The care complete history should be present. Determine the acute or chronic silenitis, isolate the infection and cause of the silenitis, clinical examination, complete the head and neck, salivary gland, milking of the gland, general probing and ductal dilatation is needed. Acute viral silenitis, mumps. Non-suppurative acute contagious generalized viral disease, painful enlargement of the parotid glands, spread airborne or droplets infection in saliva, incubation periods 2 to 3 weeks after exposure, average 17 to 18 days. Pain and swelling is one or both parotid gland will be present, exacerbated by stimulation of the gland. Minimal erythema around the ductal orifice and salivary flow is normal. Associated fever, muscular pain, headache subside in 3 to 7 days. Diagnosis, the parotiditis with systemic signs and leukopenia with increased amylase, serum amylase will be present. The treatment is symptomatic, complication meningoencephalitis, arthritis, pancreatitis. Acute suppurative parotiditis is bacterial cellular adenitis. Acute bacterial cellular adenitis is uncommon disease, affects commonly the parotid gland, less commonly affects submammary gland. Synonyms: acute suppurative parotiditis or acute parotiditis. Causative organisms is penicillin resistant staphylococcus aureus or Streptococcus viridans and Streptococcus pneumonia. Less commonly Haemophilus, bacteroids groups may be involved. Route of spread of infection: in case of acute parotiditis, the infection is usually ascending type. The bacteria reach the gland via Sten's duct. The predisposing factors are previous major surgery, especially abdominal surgery, debilitated or dehydrated patients, diabetics, malignancy, premature born infants, drugs which decrease salivary flow, Sjogren syndrome, immunocompromised patients, trauma to the duct systems, hematogenous spread of the infection from other areas. The clinical features are sudden onset of painful swelling in the preauricular regions, parotid glands involved either unilaterally or bilaterally, fever, malaise, headache, redness of the skin overlaying the parotid gland will be present, trismus, difficulty in swallowing will be present. On intraoral examination, parotid papilla may be inflamed and often pus exudates may be expressed from the ductal opening. Lab investigation, there will be elevated ESR and leukocyte count, bacterial culture form in the saliva or parotid secretion will be done. The goal of treatment should be eliminate the causative organisms, degradation of the patient should be prevented, drainage of the purulence, empirical antibiotic therapy, penicillin resistant antibiotics such as semisynthetic penicillin can be administered. Analgesics and adequate bed rest and drainage should be done. The chronic bacterial cellular adenitis, it is non-specific inflammatory disease of the salivary gland, is secondary to the duct obstruction or low-grade sustained ascending infection. The clinical features occurs in the adult and children, commonly affects parotid glands, usually unilateral, recurrent tender swelling of the affected gland is common features. Duct orifice will be inflamed and in case of acute exacerbation there will be a purulent discharge from it. Decreased salivary flow will be present. The pictures show the enlarged parotid and submandibular salivary gland. The third picture indicates the inflamed parotid papilla with purulent pus discharge. The investigation required oscillography, radiography, bacterial culture from the saliva, secretion of the gland, biopsy. The histopathology on biopsy reveals acinar atrophy of the salivary gland with the subsequent fibrosis, dilatation of duct systems, hyperplasia of ductal epithelium, chronic inflammatory cell infiltration. Recurrent parotiditis, rare conditions, affect children and adults. Predisposing factors are salivary gland calculi, structures of the duct, abnormal low secretion of the saliva due to any cause, congenital absence of duct system, immunosuppressants. Clinical features are unilateral and bilateral, recurrent painful swelling of affected glands, discharge the pus from the ductal orifice. Obstructive salivary gland diseases or cystic lesion developed from salivary gland are commonly known as mucoceles. Develops mostly in the minor salivary gland and rarely in relation to the major salivary glands. Mucoceles are of two types, mucous retention cyst and mucous estivation cyst. Mucous retention cyst, otherwise called as mucous duct cyst or xylocyst. Etiopathogenesis or obstruction of duct of the minor salivary gland, accumulation of the saliva within the gland and its ducts, thereby causing expansions. The calculus formation, scarring, crushing of the duct as a result of trauma and atresia. There is a congenital absence of duct in the salivary gland or impinging trauma, etc. The clinical features are less common than estivation phenomenon, usually appears in the older age group, commonly seen in upper lip, cheek, floor or mouth. Present as asymptomatic swelling without antecedent trauma. The overlying mucosa is intact and of normal color. Mucinous in the floor of mouth. Lesions may penetrate musculature, escape into soft tissue, neck, causing the plunging radula. Histopathology. The cavity is lined by normal ductal epithelial cells. The type of epithelial cells ranging from pseudo-stratified or stratified squamous. Cyst lumen contains mucin and calcified xylolith. The connective tissue around the lesion is minimally inflamed, although the associated gland shows obstructive changes. Differential diagnosis are salivary gland neoplasm, mucous estivation phenomenon, benign connective tissue neoplasm, dermoid cyst. The treatment and prognosis requires removal of the mucous retention cyst and the associated minor salivary gland to avoid postoperative mucous estivation phenomenon. Lesion of the major salivary gland can be treated in the similar way or on occasions only by removal of the obstructions if it occurs in the distal part of the ductal systems. Xylolith is either surgically removed or milked through the ductal orifice. Other treatment option is the marsupialization. The ranula is defined. The ranula is the form of the mucocele that specifically occurs in the floor of mouth in association with the duct of the sublingual salivary gland, rarely submandibular gland. Ranula is a Latin word. Rana frog, because swelling may resemble as a frog translucent underbelly. Etiology is obstruction of the duct by calculus, xylolith, compression of duct by trauma or growing tumors in the venicity, perforation of duct due to injury, absence of duct itself, atresia, scar or stitches, formation of duct, especially after surgery. The clinical features appears as a blue or dome-shaped reflection swelling in the floor of mouth. Deeper lesions may be normal in color. Ranula tend to be larger in diameter when compared to the mucocele in other parts of the oral cavity. They can develop into larger masses that may centimeters in diameters, fill the floor of mouth and elevate the tongue. An unusual clinical variant, the plunging or cervical ranula occurs when split mucin dissect swelling into the neck. Ranula is usually located lateral to the midline, distinguished feature of the dermoid cyst. Like other lesions, it can rupture and reform again. Treatment and prognosis: removal of the feeding sublingual gland or marsupialization. Marsupialization entails removal of the roof of the intraoral lesions, potentially allowing the sublingual gland duct to re-establish communications with the oral cavity. However, this procedure is often unsuccessful, and most authors emphasize that removal of the offending gland is the most important consideration in preventing the recurrence of the ranula. Mucous estivation phenomenon. Etiology and pathogenesis. The cause of mucous estivation phenomenon is a traumatic severance of the salivary gland excretory duct, resulting in mucous escape or estivation into the surrounding connective tissue. An inflammatory reaction of the neutrophils followed by macrophage induces. The granulation tissue forms a well around the mucin pole, and contributing salivary gland undergoes inflammatory changes, ultimately scarring occurring and around the gland. Clinical features appears as a dome-shaped mucous swelling that can range from 1 to 2 mm in several centimeters in size. Common in children and young adults. Also reported newborn infants and older peoples. Spilled mucin below the mucosal surface often impacts bluish translucent hue to swelling. Although deeper mucosal may be normal in color. The lesion is characterized by the fluctuant. Some mucosal feel firmer on palpations. Duration of lesion will be few days to several years. The history of recurrent swelling is that periodically may rupture and leach into fluid content. The lower lip is most common site of occurrence accounting for about 60%. Mucosal usually found lateral to the midline. Less common sites include buccal mucosa, anteroventral duct, tongue, and floor of the mouth. It develops on upper lip also. The superficial mucosals develop as a single multiple tense vesicle that measures 1 to 4 mm in diameter. The lesion offers burst, leaving shallow, painful ulcers that heals within a few days. The deep-seated lesions usually cause small but diffuse swelling with no color changes in the overlying mucosa. The mucosal present in the lower lip. You can see the bluish discoloration in the incision is marked around the mucosal. The elliptical incision will be placed. Blind dissection is done around the mucosal. Lesion is excised and the wound is closed using 30 silk excised specimen. WHO classification of cervical gland tumors is given in 1992. WHO classified the cervical gland tumors under adenomas and carcinomas. The few examples of adenomas are pleomorphic adenoma, myopithelioma, basal cell adenoma, Warthin's tumors, oncocytoma, sebaceous adenoma, ductal papilloma. And the carcinomas are actinic cell carcinoma, mucoplasma carcinoma, adenoid cystic carcinoma, basal cell carcinoma, sebaceous carcinoma, cervical gland duct carcinomas, myopithelial carcinoma, and squamous cell carcinoma. The tumors may be benign and malignant. And other non-epithelial tumors are malignant lymphoma, secondary tumors, uncalcified tumors like lesions like ciliadenosis, oncocytosis, necrotic ciliometaplasia, benign lymphoepithelial lesions, and cervical gland cysts. The pleomorphic adenomas, the pleo means many and morphous means the change in the form. Most common of cervical gland tumors, it is seen in the major cervical glands. Parotid gland is majority is involved, 80%, occurs in the superficial lobe. Histogenesis, myopithelial cells, morphological diversity of the tumor including production of the fibrous, mucinous, chondroid and osseous areas. Resource cell in the intercalated duct differentiate into a myopithelial cell and metaplasia will be present. Pleomorphic adenoma or the benign mixed tumors is the most common of all cervical gland tumors. It comprises about 70% of all parotid tumors, 50% of submandibular tumors, 40% of minor cervical gland tumors, but only 6% of the sublingual tumors. Most common location of occurrence is parotid, 80%, followed by the minor cervical gland, 100%, in which the palate, upper lip, buccal mucosa are most commonly affected. Diagnosed in the 4th or 6th decade of life and are uncommon in children, although they are second only to hemangiomas in this population. They are seen more frequently in women with female to male ratio 3:4.1. Clinical features is present in the 4th and 6th decade of life. Small, painless nodules which enlarges slowly, does not fix to the deeper structures, overlying skin, no pain, pressure sensation, local discomfort is present. Facial involvement is rare. Small lesions lesser than 1 cm usually round and homogeneous in appearance. Greater than 2-3 cm exhibit lobulation. Malignant transformation will present 2 to 4%. There will be accelerated growth rate, irregularity on palpation, nodular in appearance, necrosis and painful ulceration, facial nerve involvement will be present. Dumble tumors into the pharyngeal space is rare. 1 to 1.4% of the tumors is present and will be present in the pharyngeal space. 80 to 90% are the pleomorphic adenomas. Warthin tumors are papillary cyst adenoma lymphomatosa is mostly involved in the parotid gland. Arises in the salivary gland tissue entrapped within the paraparotid and intraparotid lymph nodes. Develop from the salivary duct within the lymph node. Delayed hypersensitivity disease. Clinical features are middle-aged and elderly males, painless, lower pole of the parotid gland well down below the ear, lobe, ear and the overlap the nuclear muscles and superficially placed. Histological features are two components, epithelial and lymphoid. Adenoma exhibiting cystic formation with papillary projection into the cystic spaces and lymphoid matrix showing germinal centers. Mucoplasma carcinoma, most common tumors of the cervical gland origins. Ductal epithelium differentiate metaplasia happened into squamous mucous type. Rarely encapsulated, increases the possibility of spillage. 3rd and 5th decades will be present most commonly. Most frequent malignancy of the childhood. 40% of the palate, tuberosity, retrominal regions, and tongue and floor of mouth. Three grades of the microbial carcinomas: low grade, intermediate, and high grade. The low grade is well-formed granular structures or microcystic lined by single layer of the mucous secretions. Carcinoma cells may have papillary infolding. Intermediate grade: the solid areas of the epidermal cells are squamous cells within the intermediate baseloid cells, papillary cystic infolding of the epidermoid or baseloid cells. High grade: majority of cells are solid nests and coats of intermediate baseloid cells and epidermal cells. Prominent nuclear pleomorphism will be present. Cystic components usually lesser than 20%. Rare glands, although occasionally the glandular component may predominate more in mitotic figures, necrosis and peritoneal elimination will be present. Ordinary cystic carcinoma, extremely slow rate of growth will be present, striking tendency to infiltrate locally in the tissue planes between the muscle fasciculi well beyond the naked eye. Marked proneness to infiltrate and spread along the perineal spaces. Mostly present in the 6th and 7th decade of the life. Most common of all minor salivary gland malignancy in major salivary gland, 2 to 6% of parotid gland tumors present, 15% will present in the submandibular tumors. Many invade medullary bone without stimulating resorptions. Destruction seen on the radiograph is not a reliable guide to the extent of the bone involvement. Metastasis and lymph node will be present and the lungs will be T1 classification of salivary gland malignancy is TX. The minimal requirement to assess the tumor is not yet met. T0 is no evidence of primary tumors, and T is carcinoma in situ, and T1 is tumor less than 2 cm in size or less in greater dimension without extra parenchymal extension. T2 is greater than 2 cm dimension but not more than 4 cm in greater dimension without the extra parenchymal extension. And the T3 is greater than 4 cm in dimension but not more than 6 cm in greatest dimensions. Tumor having extra parenchymal extension without the 7th cranial nerve, that is facial nerve involvement. T4 is a tumor invades the base of the skull, 7th nerve, and it exceeds 6 cm in the greatest of dimensions. The nodal involvement NX cannot be accessed. The nodal N0 is no evidence of the node involvement, and N1 is evidence of nodal involvement will be present, and distance metastasis MX cannot be accessed. M0 is no metastasis present. M1 is a distant metastasis present. And various stages is classified as stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. The stages helps in the prognosis and outcome of the treatment of the salivary gland tumors. The management of the parotid tumor is by superficial parotidectomy with preservation of the facial nerve, total parotidectomy with preservation of the facial nerve, and radical parotidectomy with neck dissections. The superficial parotidectomy involves removal of the superficial lobe, leaving the deep lobe. The total parotidectomy involves removal of the both lobes with preservation of the facial nerve. The parotidectomy is planned by placing the classical Y-shaped incision. The Y-shaped incision is planned starting from the superior attachment of the pinna downwards and anteriorly towards the angle of the mandible and forward till the hyoid bone of the incision is made posterior to the pinna. The ear lobe is retracted upward and the skin flap is developed on the cheek side of the incision. The electrical nerve stimulator is used to identify the facial nerve. After the nerve trunk is located, then the course of the nerve is followed. Superficial lobe is freed from its attachment. The Jensen duct is located and ligated and cut. The deep lobe is approached after this. By further retracting the ear lobe posterior superiorly, the ligation of external carotid artery, posterior facial vein is carried out. The facial nerve is then carefully elevated from the deep portions. Retromandibular vein is also divided from its inferior and superior branches and stems ligated. The deep portion is generally dissected and dissected out of the retromandibular space. This deep portion rests on the styloid process and stylohyoid, styloglossus and digastric muscles. If the tumor is very bulky, the ascending ramus may be divided and reflected, facilitate the excision of the deep lobe. The mandible is then rewired in position. The wound is closed in layers and drain is placed. During the surgical procedure, the facial nerve can be identified by injecting the methylene blue dye into the duct and also by proximal identification of the main tracts before it enters the gland. The identification of the marginal mandibular branch, it can be traced back into the gland, and the facial nerve can be identified and preserved. There are various branching pattern of the facial nerve will be present. The peripheral branches of the facial nerve form the anastomosis arcuates between the adjacent branches to form the parotid plexus. These anastomosis are important during the facial nerve dissection as its axonal damage to the small branches often fails to result in any facial weakness due to its dual innervation from adjacent branches. The complication following the parotid surgery involves risk associated with general anesthesia, wound infections, bleeding, unfavorable scarring, recurrence of disease, salivary fistula or psilocele, Ferret syndrome, injury to the nerves, greater auricular nerve, and numbness of the ear will be present, and facial weakness will be present. Ferret syndrome. The copious sweating over the parotid site when exposed to the salivary stimulation or simply erythematous blush over the parotid area. Flushing and sweating of the skin of the upper cheek, temple, and the forehead occur whenever salivary secretion is stimulated. It arises from the damage to the parasympathetic nerves from aortic ganglion, which on healing supply the sweat glands that are normally supplied by the sympathetic fibers. Ferret syndrome can be clinically diagnosed, confirmed with starch iodine test. The treatment for the Ferret syndrome: topical atropinoids, tympanic neurectomy, raising thick flaps, interposing fascia, fat or flaps over the wound bed, synthetic implants, topical anticholinergics. A variation in the Ferret syndrome are gustatory tearing or gustatory rhinorrhea.